Have anything in my teeth?
Probably.
Can you see me? Hey friends, it is tomato planting time. And how does a tomato and a banana and egg go together? Stick around and I'll show you. The first step to planting your tomatoes is to figure out what kind of tomato you're planting. There are two types of tomatoes. There are interdeterminate tomatoes, and they typically get super large and they like something to climb on. And they will do so as long as they are happy and they are fertilized, they'll continue to grow. Then there are determinate tomatoes. They are a more bush variety and they have a determined amount of tomatoes that they will produce. They typically can be put in a tomato cage like this, and they won't get much higher than that. You do not want to put interdeterminate tomatoes into a cage. You will have tomatoes coming out the top, they'll flop over, it'll be a big mess. So that's your first tip. Make sure you know which one you're planting.
Get out of here!
The first step we're going to do is preparing the soil for where I'm going to be planting. I like to prepare my soil with a broad fork. This basically is just going to loosen up the soil. We do a no-till method here, so I do not disturb my soil more than I need to. But this will create some air, it'll make the roots nice and happy to be able to move around, and so we'll do that before we plant. The broad fork that I'm using is from a family-owned company in Arkansas. It's called the Mindful Farmer. And whenever I can support a family-owned business, I do so, and this thing has been great. If you do not have a broad fork, this is what I used for years, a hoe. I would go along the row, I would just gently disturb the soil and make my row that way. If you see these little marks on my hoe, this is my way of measuring in the garden when I don't feel like having a tape measure or a ruler. I have pre-measurements on my hoe and I have marked the spacing of my peppers and cucumbers, my interdeterminate tomatoes, and my determinate tomatoes. So it's a quick, easy reference. The next thing that I'll use is a shovel. And the reason I have a big shovel here for tomatoes is because I'm gonna dig a really deep hole. And I'll show you why I do that when we plant the tomato. Sorry to interrupt, but if you are enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We really appreciate y'all watching. Now back to it. So a couple things I bring down to the garden when I'm planting tomatoes are bananas and eggs and Epsom salts. I'll tell you why in a minute. The first step that we're gonna do is prepare the soil. So the kids love to help me with this part. Gives me a good workout. I don't need to go to the gym because I have an earth gym. All of my interdeterminate tomatoes are gonna be going along this trellis. I'm gonna fit about 11 or 12 along here. So I'm gonna take the broad fork as close as I can to this and just gently lift up the soil all the way along this row. So the first step is gonna be taking the broad fork and just putting it into the soil. You're gonna jump on the middle of it and then you're gonna pull back and just gently lift up that soil. So tomatoes like to be planted really deep because if you look closely on the stem here, there's a bunch of little hairs, and all of those little hairs will be roots if they touch soil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prune all of these leaves off to like right here, and only this part will be sticking out of the ground. So you can see how big of a hole I need to dig to be able to fit my nutrients in the hole and in the tomato plant. I am super happy with this soil. As I'm digging it up, it's nice and crumbly. It's not like sticking together. It's beautiful. So now I'm just gonna take my hand trowel and kind of dig out. It's a little bit easier once you get down to the bottom like this.
Mom.
The worm?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take that one. Seeing worms in our soil is good, right? Well, he does not want you to get him.
Ooh.
Do you know why worms are good for the soil, Carson?
Why?
Because they poop, and then that poop fertilizes our plants, and they also create air holes. You know how you pulled him out of that hole? Mm-hmm. Well, that's hole where air can get in, and they also help break down all the stuff in the garden. There's 3 things I'm gonna add to every single tomato hole that I plant, whether it be an interdeterminate tomato or a determinate tomato. The first thing is a banana, a whole banana. This is gonna add potassium to the soil. Then I'm gonna add an entire egg. The whole thing, do not break this. We had one year where Rachel accidentally broke some. A critter came along that night and dug up every single one of her tomato plants. But mine were fine. So if the egg is whole, the critters won't dig it up. But this egg will slowly break down throughout the season, adding nutrients into the soil, giving calcium to the plant. And tomatoes really need calcium so they don't get blossom end rot, which is that nasty black like fungus that forms on the bottom of tomatoes sometimes. The next thing I'm gonna do is add an entire handful of Epsom salts. Epsom salts really promote growth, and it also adds some magnesium to the soil. So let's get planting. Who wants to put the banana in the hole? Okay, Carson, come. So put this banana in the hole. Try not to break it. Just kind of set it down in there in the bottom. Okay. Sometimes, yeah, like that. That's perfect. Okay. Now hold on. We just look. I'm gonna nestle it right in there. Okay. We don't want to break it. Okay.
It slips out. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's probably enough. Okay. I'm gonna take just a little bit of dirt and kind of cover up those things just a little bit. So I'm not planting the tomato right on top of that stuff, but giving it some dirt for the roots to go down into. This is the tomato that we're gonna be planting. So I'm gonna take it out of its container here. I'm just gently squeezing the container. It kind of helps the soil release from the container so you can pull it out. So you can see this is our tomato here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a pruners and I'm gonna prune off all of these bottom leaves here. So now we're gonna set this tomato plant into the hole, and we're just gonna put this dirt on top. It might seem kind of scary to cut off all those limbs on your tomato plant, but in the long run, you will be very thankful that you did, because like I said, those little hairs on your tomato plant, they're all gonna turn into roots underneath that soil. So when you get really strong summer wind and storms, your tomato plant will be super strong because of a really strong root system. Our first tomato plant of the season is officially planted. Woo! It's the best time of the year. Always make sure to label your plants. I'll stick the tag right in here. Can you see her pooping? No, don't poop in the garden. No!
Is she pooping?
Always make sure to stick a tag in your tomato, because if you love that tomato, it doesn't help you if you don't remember what kind of tomato it was. I also make note of it in my garden journal, so I know exactly what I have planted along here. The only other step that I will have this season is to tie this up as it grows, and I will fertilize my tomatoes once a month with an organic fertilizer. I can be sure to link that in the description below. A few years ago, I started this simple trick of putting a banana, egg, and Epsom salt in my tomato holes, and it changed my tomato harvest. I have healthy plants, I have an abundance of tomatoes, so this is something I will do forever. I hope it was something new that you learned, and I hope you have a successful tomato season.
Oh, my big face pooping.
No, right by my tomato, I just planted it. You are gonna, okay.
Put that in the video.
So this brings me to my other point, and we have a short about this, is putting citrus peels in your garden will deter cats from pooping in your garden, which I obviously need to do.